Everyone thinks America's $38 trillion debt is a crisis waiting to explode. But what if I told you the government is already making it disappear, and you're the one paying for it, and it gets worse and a lot more clever? Picture this. October 2025, the United States national debt crosses $38 trillion for the first time in history. That's more money than the entire American economy produces in a year. Interest payments? Over $1 trillion annually. That's more than the entire defense budget. If you started spending $1 million every single day when Jesus was born, 2,000 years ago, you still wouldn't have spent a single $1 trillion. America owes 38 of those. Politicians will tell you they're working on it. They talk about fiscal responsibility and balancing the budget. Both parties promise solutions, but that's only the version they want you to remember. Because here's what they don't tell you. The debt has grown under every single president of the modern era. Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. And the last 5 years, that's when things went completely off the rails. Because here's the part they never mention. The government already knows this debt can never be repaid. Mathematically impossible. So they're not even trying. Instead, they're using a strategy so clever, so subtle, that most Americans don't even realize it's happening. It's called financial repression, and you've been living through it for years. Here's how it works. The government doesn't declare bankruptcy. They don't default on the debt. They don't even raise your taxes dramatically. They do something far more insidious. They make the debt smaller by making your money worth less. Think of it like this. If you owe someone $100, and that $100 suddenly has the purchasing power of $50, you've effectively cut your debt in half without paying a cent. This is inflation, but it's not accidental inflation, it's engineered inflation. Ray Dalio, one of the world's most successful hedge fund managers, explained it perfectly. Countries that go broke don't just default, they print money, devalue the currency, and create artificially low interest rates. The people holding government bonds get returns that can't keep up with real inflation. It's like watching someone juggle chainsaws while yelling, "Trust me, I've got this." But the craziest part is still coming. When the Federal Reserve maintains its 2% inflation target, which sounds so innocent, so responsible, your dollar loses 2% of its value every single year. Over a decade, that's nearly a 20% loss in purchasing power. Over 30 years, your dollar is worth half of what it was. This isn't a bug, it's a feature. Here's the brutal truth. Inflation is a tax, but unlike regular taxes, you never see it coming. You don't write a check, you don't file a form. You just wake up one day and realize your paycheck doesn't stretch as far. Since 2020, Americans have experienced over 24% cumulative inflation. If you had $10,000 in savings in 2020, it now buys what $7,600 would have bought back then. The government just took $2,400 from you, without asking, without announcing it, without most people even noticing. Meanwhile, the government's debt, in real terms, it's shrinking. But there's a catch. A dangerous one. The debt is so massive now that the Federal Reserve has lost its most powerful tool, interest rates. Imagine the U.S. economy is a car, the Treasury is the driver, spending money, the Federal Reserve is the brake, raising interest rates to slow inflation when the Treasury spends too much. But now, the car is towing a $38 trillion trailer. If the Fed hits the brakes too hard, the government's interest payments explode. At current debt levels, every 1% increase in interest rates costs the government hundreds of billions more per year. So, what happens? The Fed can't really fight inflation anymore. They're stuck. They can either let inflation run hot and destroy your savings, or raise rates and risk collapsing the government's ability to service its debt. Higher interest rates can actually cause inflation when debt is this large. The traditional tools don't work anymore. The game has changed. But here's the detail everyone ignores. While ordinary Americans are losing purchasing power, the government is quietly building something else. While inflation erodes the real value of what they owe, the U.S. government is stockpiling hard assets. In March 2025, President Trump signed an executive order establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve. The government is now accumulating Bitcoin, treating it like digital gold. They're using forfeited assets from criminal cases. But the strategy is clear. Accumulate scarce, inflation-resistant assets while the dollar loses value. Why? Because Bitcoin's supply is fixed. Only 21 million will ever exist. As dollars become worth less, scarce assets become worth more. Here's the play. Let inflation quietly reduce the real value of $38 trillion in debt. Accumulate assets that gain value as the dollar loses value. When the crisis becomes unavoidable, introduce a reset. The reset could involve a partially Bitcoin-backed or gold-backed dollar, a new digital currency system, a revaluation of reserves. In this scenario, the old debt fades into irrelevance. The government stabilizes the currency using its accumulated assets. It's not default, it's transformation. And here's what makes this so insidious. You're being encouraged to participate in your own financial repression. As inflation eats away at cash savings, people panic. They move money into stocks, real estate, Bitcoin, gold, anything to preserve value. This drives asset prices higher, which looks great on paper, but it also means housing becomes unaffordable for young people. The wealth gap explodes. Anyone who stayed in cash gets crushed. Meanwhile, the government and wealthy elites who already own assets benefit massively. Their debts shrink in real terms. Their assets appreciate. This isn't capitalism. It's a wealth transfer dressed up as monetary policy, and it's happening slowly enough that most people don't connect the dots. They blame greedy landlords for high rent, greedy corporations for high prices, politicians for incompetence. But it's not incompetence, it's the plan. This is the moment we're living in right now. Markets haven't collapsed. Everything looks normal. CNBC talks about stock gains. Politicians debate tax policy. Your 401k keeps growing, but underneath, the foundations are cracking. Economist after economist uses the same warning. Debt crises develop slowly until they happen all at once. It's the Ernest Hemingway quote about bankruptcy. How did you go bankrupt? Gradually, then suddenly. We're in the gradually phase. If money could scream, this would be the moment it lost its voice. So let's make this practical. This isn't just abstract economic theory. Your savings. Every dollar in a savings account is losing purchasing power. Even high-yield savings accounts can't keep up with real inflation. Your retirement, Social Security, and pensions are calculated in nominal dollars. As inflation persists, these fixed incomes buy less and less. Your wages. Even if you get a raise, if it doesn't beat inflation, you're taking a pay cut. Your paycheck number went up, your buying power went down. Financial experts suggest stop thinking in nominal dollars. Think in purchasing power. Hard assets like real estate, commodities, and precious metals historically preserve value. Skills and education. Your earning power is your most valuable asset. But here's the uncomfortable truth. These strategies are more accessible to people who already have wealth. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, you can't invest in inflation protection. The system is rigged to benefit those who already have assets. Strip away the economics jargon, and here's what this story is really about. Trust. A financial system only works when people trust it. Trust that $1 today will be worth roughly $1 tomorrow. Trust that if you save, those savings will have value. That trust is eroding. You see it everywhere. Younger generations skeptical of traditional investing, the rise of crypto and alternative currencies, increasing wealth inequality, fueling social unrest, political extremism on both sides gaining traction. When people feel the system is rigged, they stop playing by the rules. The quiet erosion of the dollar is creating loud consequences in society. Finance isn't just numbers on a screen. It's the foundation of social stability. And that foundation is cracking. Every empire in history has faced this moment. Rome, Spain, Britain. Each was the dominant power of its time. Each had the reserve currency of its era. Each accumulated debt it couldn't repay. And each tried to inflate its way out. Rome literally shaved silver from coins until they were nearly worthless. The Spanish Empire imported so much New World gold that they destroyed their own currency's value. Britain gradually surrendered sterling's role after World War II. Now, it's America's turn. But here's what's different. For the first time in history, we have technology that could enable an alternative. Bitcoin and blockchain represent the possibility of money that can't be debased. That exists outside any government's control. The next financial system is being built right now. The only question is, who will control it? If you take nothing else from this video, remember this: finance isn't logical. It's emotional chaos with a price tag. The $38 trillion debt isn't a spreadsheet problem. It's a human problem. Politicians don't cut spending because they fear losing elections. Central bankers print money because they fear a collapse. Investors chase assets because they fear inflation. Every crisis in history teaches the same lesson: greed always wins the short game and destroys the long one. So, is the U.S. really erasing $38 trillion in debt? Yes and no. The nominal amount keeps growing, but its real value, its actual economic burden, is being quietly reduced through inflation. Your government isn't defaulting. It's not declaring bankruptcy. It's not crashing the economy. It's doing something subtler, cleverer, and more socially acceptable. It's making the debt disappear by making your money worth less, and you're paying for it. Every time you fill your gas tank, every time you buy groceries, every time you check your savings account, the debt isn't being erased. It's being transferred from the government's balance sheet to your cost of living. Behind all these numbers and policies are real people. The single mom trying to figure out why groceries cost so much more. The retiree watching their savings buy less each year. The young graduate wondering if they'll ever afford a house. The tragedy of this situation isn't just the math. It's that most people suffering from it don't even understand what's happening. They blame themselves. They think they're failing when actually the system is failing them. You're not crazy. You're not failing. The game changed, and nobody explained the new rules. Here's what you can control. Educate yourself. Understanding this stuff is your first line of defense. Adapt your strategy. If inflation is the new normal, adjust. Build skills. The best investment is yourself. Stay skeptical. Question narratives. Most importantly, don't let the system's dysfunction become your excuse for not trying. Yes, it's harder to build wealth now than it was for previous generations. Yes, the game is somewhat rigged, but giving up guarantees failure. Understanding the game gives you a chance to win anyway. This is one of the biggest economic stories of our time, and most people have no idea it's happening. That's not an accident. Complexity is the perfect camouflage, but you made it this far. That means you're curious. You're willing to learn. You understand that knowledge is power. The only thing more dangerous than the debt itself is the fact that most people don't understand it. Ignorance isn't bliss, it's vulnerability. If you found this valuable, share it, because knowledge is the only real currency that increases when you give it away. Someone in your life needs to understand this. The $38 trillion debt is real. The inflation is real. The erosion of purchasing power is real. But so is your ability to understand it and respond intelligently. You're not powerless. You're just uninformed, and now you're not. And if you think this story is insane, wait until you hear what's happening with Social Security. The trust fund runs dry in 2033. That's 8 years away, but that's a video for another day. Until then, stay curious, stay skeptical, and stay informed.